Hi, my name is Anna Blake, and I'm a horse trainer and author. I live out on the flat, windy, treeless prairie of Colorado on a small farm. In 2020, I published my sixth book. It's a book of memoir poetry entitled Horse Woman. Um, I think for a lot of us, the cowboy narrative of life with horses was never a good fit. And it's time to honor the lives that women spend with horses and the land, to talk about our special perspective of weather and nature and memory. For us, it was never about domination of horses or anybody else. For us, it was always about making a home and caring for the herd. And I share some memory of my farm, childhood farm in the 50s in Minnesota. And then I also harken back. I think about her all the time. My grandmother, Lefa Numbers Blake, traveled in a covered wagon to North Dakota and founded with her husband a farm there. And she bragged that she had birthed more calves and foals than any woman in North Dakota. She used to say, life was tough if you was useless. And I'm proud of the things that women have given to the lives of horses and farming. We have a rich history, and it deserves to have a voice. And so, Horse Woman by Anna Blake. It's available at all online bookstores, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Book Depository. The ebook version is available wherever ebooks are sold as well. And if you'd like a signed copy of the book, you can get that at my website, annablake.com. Thanks so much.
What happens when a teacher educator who taught children's literature for 33 years goes down a mental health rabbit hole at the age of 61 and decides it's time to heal? She retires, and she and her husband buy an RV and begin healing together while living at the edge of Garden of the Gods. I'm Janyne McConnaughey, and the three memoirs that I wrote during the years we lived in our RV were published in 2018, 2019, and 2020. While I have moved to be near family in Washington State, my first book, Brave, a personal story of healing childhood trauma, takes place in the Pikes Peak area and includes stories about Manitou Springs, Gold Camp Road, Pikes Peak, Fountain Creek, and Garden of the Gods. All these places held special meaning as I worked to heal, and they became part of my brave stories. Along the way, our rescue dog Weber joined us and enjoyed RV living. He was named after Weber Street, where my therapist's office was located. He became our therapy dog, and he has cameo appearances in the books. Ah, yes, I mentioned children's literature, didn't I? From the moment I described my crisis as falling down the rabbit hole, Alice became part of the story. In fact, she drags her chair from the Mad Hatter's Tea Party from chapter to chapter as she helps to tell the story in the second book, Jeannie's Brave Childhood, Behavior and Healing Through the Lens of Attachment and Trauma. In this book, she helps Jeannie explain behaviors of traumatized children and how both children and adults can heal. One of those ways is through the literature of childhood, which helps children process their often overwhelming emotions. In the third book, A Brave Life, Survival, Resilience, Hope, Faith and Hope, Alice steps aside and lets Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz assist in narrating my story, which follows the yellow brick road from California to Missouri, then to Colorado, and finally reaches the Emerald City of Seattle. This is my third attempt to share my story during this event. I am grateful to the Pikes Peak Library District for this opportunity to acknowledge the important role the Pikes Peak area played in both my healing and becoming a trauma-informed advocate and author. You will find these 3 books to be great reads that cross genres of memoir, include elements of fantasy, and weave in psychoeducation. You will walk away with important ways to view the mental health crisis that the pandemic has brought and highlighted and caused in our nation, and enjoy Alice and Dorothy along the way. All 3 books are available in Kindle and paperback format on Amazon through Barnes & Nobles and IndieBound. You can find more information at my website, Janyne.org. You just have to remember that Janyne is Janyne. Even my name has a different twist.
Hi everyone, I'm Fran Pilch, and I'm very happy to be with you today talking about my new book. And I want to thank the Pikes Peak Library District for hosting Mountain of Authors. I participated a couple of years ago, and it was a wonderful time, met incredibly talented authors from all over our region, and it's a great contribution to the literary world here where we live. So my new book is called Domestic Violence, Tragedy and Hope, and it is really not my book. It's a collaborative effort. You probably know quite a few of these names who helped me with this book. They all contributed, and they all come from different perspectives on domestic violence. We have Howard Black, who gives the law enforcement perspective, Janet Kerr, who is a psychotherapist and who was at one time the executive director of TESSA. We have Dave McCone, who's a professor of psychology and a clinical psychologist at the United States Air Force Academy. We have Doug Miles, who's a judge, Erica Vida, who's a victim advocate, and Patricia Lostro, who is the only one who's not from Colorado Springs. She runs a resource center for victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse in Nebraska. So let me tell you a little bit about the way this book is organized, because it's a very unique presentation on the subject. We've constructed a story called Suzanne's Story about a woman who falls in love with a man named Rob, eventually marries him, and this story is constructed from fragments of real-life victims' stories, and Janet Kerr wrote this. And along the way, as you see Suzanne descend into the abyss of domestic violence, you'll see a lot of red flags. You'll notice them right away. And pretty soon she gets into a situation where she's married to this guy. He's abusive. It's a very destructive relationship, and she can't find her way out of the relationship. And then after the fictional story is complete, I asked each one of these collaborators to talk about their perspective on the story, what they would think of it. And they are really fascinating contributions. The law enforcement guy, Howard Black, talks about what it's really like to go on a police report of domestic violence, and there are plenty of them in Colorado Springs. The judge talks about what it's like for one of these cases to go through the court system. The victim advocate will go along with the police call and assist the victim in any way she can. She talks about some of her experiences. We have the psychotherapist who talks about what's going on psychologically in these power and control situations. And we have a survivor who comments on the story and discusses how difficult it is for a victim to leave her abuser. So when we started this project, we had two objectives in mind. One was to address the cultural problem that we have where the victim is often blamed for staying in the situation, and people don't really understand how very, very difficult it is to extricate herself or himself from a domestic violence situation. So we really wanted to try to make that clear to people so that we can address this problem of blaming the victim. The second thing, which was really one of the things I wanted to do, was to provide an opportunity for parents to discuss with their sons and daughters the problem of domestic violence and to note red flags. So if you see your daughter dating someone who has control issues, who wants her to dress a certain way or wants to isolate her from her friends, you will see right away that that's a red flag that says, you know, this is a warning sign that maybe this relationship is not going to be a healthy relationship. So that's what the book is about. We think it's a very unique way of looking at this issue. It's available at all bookstores, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's in a Kindle edition. And you can always just contact me at franpilch@gmail.com. All of us are available to give presentations to groups if you're interested. And I do want to just take a moment to read the endorsement, which is by Pam Shockley-Zalabek, who was the chancellor of UCCS Colorado Springs. I won't read the whole thing, but it was so exciting to have Pam endorse this book so enthusiastically. She says, "This book is hard to read. That is why we must read it and seek to understand. Years ago, I rode wearing a bulletproof vest with the Divert group, that's a law enforcement group, described in these pages to observe the innovative, multidisciplinary teamwork in use to address this unbelievable problem of abuse and violence. The experience changed me. I hope this book will change you." Once again, thank you to the Pikes Peak Library District for allowing us to talk about our books. It's a real service that they do to our community.
Hi everyone, my name is Elayne Prechtel and I'm thrilled to be a part of this year's Pikes Peak Library Book Buzz. I think that during this past year of 2020 and COVID, a lot of us were inspired in a lot of different ways, whether it was through hobbies or just using our creativity. And so that resulted in another cookbook, and it is all about cookies. And there's so many people who, get frustrated when they make cookies. They fall flat and they turn out messy. And so we have given you all the tips that you need for the Pikes Peak region for you to have cookie success. And so we share all of our favorite tips and beautiful photography so you know what they look like on the other end. And I just know you guys are going to love these cookie recipes. And, one of those great lessons that we have learned out of COVID is that sharing with our friends, with our family, with our community is one of the best ways to unite and bond us, so we all champion each other on, and you just feel a part of something greater when you go and share things. And so this cookbook was created with a lot of love, out of love, to inspire folks to go and share with one another, because if there's one way to lift your own spirits, it's through the power of sharing. And so I hope you guys will check out this cookbook. We have a great collection of a lot of heirloom items that we want people to pass on from generation to generation. And so we've shared that with you. You can find all of that at sharinglifeloveandfood.com. And we also have a share collection for all those heirloom items. And we'll give you all that information so you guys can check it out too.
Hi, my name is Sarah Byrn Rickman, and I'm an author. What I'm holding here is my newest book, Betty Gillies Waff's Pilot, The Days and Flights of a World War II Squadron Leader. The book is written for age 10 on up to adults. It will appeal to both. It is a biography, and I wrote it by using Betty's diary, which she very carefully left for posterity after World War II. It is insightful. Her writing is very clear what they're doing. She explains the squadron and how they're operating, the problems that they have, the frustrations, and she tells about some of her flights, which is absolutely gripping. Some of them are. This biography is the third of a series. The first was B.J. Erickson, WASP pilot. The second was Nancy Love, WASP pilot. By writing about Betty, I filled out the top 3 leaders of the women who flew for the Ferrying Division Air Transport Command in World War II. The first book that I wrote about the women who flew in World War II is the originals, Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron of World War II. It is the basis of all of my books. It is about the first squadron of 28 women who volunteered to fly in World War II. Believe me, that is still World War II's best kept secret. My books are all on Amazon. You can buy, some are paperback, there are a couple of hardbacks, nearly all of them are on Kindle, not quite all of them. I would also ask you to check out my website, which is sarahbyrnrickman.com. All of my books are listed there, and you can read about them and decide what you might like to look at to buy. And the library carries several of them as well. I do write a blog that I post almost weekly on that website. So if you're interested in reading more about the women who flew in World War II, check out my blog. I want to thank the Pikes Peak Library District for inviting me to do this. They're a great library, and many thanks to them. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you. Please read my books.
I'm Jessy Randall, and this is my most recent book, How to Tell If You Are Human. It's part of the Pleiades Press Visual Poetry series. What are visual poems, you may wonder to yourself? Well, they are images, usually taken, in my case, from old library books at the Colorado College Library, with my own text added to them, to make them into something that's sort of like a meme, but as my teenage son says, not funny and very unlikely to go viral. Well, I think some of them are funny. Here are a few diagram poems from the book.
Sorry, Mom, I didn't hear you. Mom, seriously, I only just got on. I can't stop now, it's an important part. Aw, Mom, 5 more minutes? I heard you. I'll be right down. Just let me die one more time. They finally figured out what's wrong with you. I should probably get going. Please ask me to stay. Disaster plan. The original illustration for this diagram poem comes from a book called A Gamut of Games. I don't remember what game it's showing, but to me it looked a lot like the sort of worthless disaster plan of the 1960s through 80s, where you were supposed to hide under your desk in case of a nuclear attack. Wedding seating chart, showing which guests were involved with which other guests and when and how. In regular life, I talk too much, but in a poem, I can be perfect. You are special, Everyone is special. Please tell me what to do. Stop telling me what to do. Please tell me what to do. I exist. So do I. Okay, good. That's settled.
How to Tell If You Are Human is available for $20 from most online book distributors, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Powell's, and so on. And maybe you can get it for free at your own local library.
Hi, I'm John Boland, and I'm so thrilled to introduce Randy Rush in his new book, Loving Tammy, No Regrets. I'm going to read a little bit from the back cover of the book. Loving Tammy, No Regrets is a love story that chronicles the difficult journey undertaken by Tammy and Randy as they face Tammy's early onset Alzheimer's disease together. It's an inspirational read that depicts the real-life struggle of Alzheimer's, but at the same time giving practical insights, resources, and encouragement to others who find themselves facing similar circumstances. From a romantic setting in Santorini, Greece, to a limiting existence in a wheelchair in memory care. From a vibrant woman at the age of 49 to a 90-pound shell of her former self at the age of 60. From excitement in planning her retirement years to an isolated COVID quarantine. This book demonstrates the love that two people have for each other and the ability for that love to persevere through the most challenging of circumstances. I encourage you to read and enjoy Loving Tammy, No Regrets, and go on the journey with Tammy and Randy, and perhaps you can find inspiration, joy, and hope in the midst of your own circumstances.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the Pikes Peak Library System for the opportunity to share a little bit about my book. The name of the book is Loving Tammy, No Regrets. It is an early onset Alzheimer's story. I consider it a love story because it chronicles how Tammy and I dealt with this devastating disease over the last 11 years. One thing about Alzheimer's is that there is currently no cure. There's no medicines that you can take that improve the quality of life or anything of any consequence. In fact, the Alzheimer's Association has the motto right now that they're looking for the very first survivor. It is very progressive. It ultimately robs the individual of all faculty, ability to speak, ability to walk. It's truly what I consider to be a love story. It's how Tammy and I went along this journey, how we kept the love that we had between us intact, in fact, tried to nurture it and keep it going. Part of the story is no regrets, is that there are so many decisions that you have to make when you're a caregiver of your spouse, particularly when they're young like that, that those decisions are very, very difficult and you don't know what to do. There are ways to get through this, to make decisions where after it's all done and completed, you have no regrets. And that's the basic story that is behind this, and the way Tammy and I loved each other throughout this period of time. One is to provide hope, because it is a very progressive, debilitating disease. It doesn't get better with time, it actually just gets worse. The second thing is to also be a resource to other people. Many times when people are diagnosed, this is out of the blue, and you don't know where to turn for ideas, thoughts, particularly how to get along through this progressing of the disease. Fran Pilch for her help in writing the book. Without her diligent work and excellent writing skills, the book would not have happened. You can get the book if you're interested in it. You can order it online through Amazon. It's also available digital as a Kindle book. The Pikes Peak Library System, of course, will have some books. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss the book. We are looking forward to being able to share its resources and its story of hope to anyone who is in need of this information. Again, thank you very much.